This is On the Hunt at foxnews.com. Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan Hunt. The US, Britain and France all closed their embassies in Yemen this week. Diplomats have been flown out of that country as it slips further and further into chaos, with rebels taking more and more ground. This, of course, in the home of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So what does it all mean for US national security interests? To discuss that now, I'm joined by Commander Kirk Lippold, retired from the US Navy, and of course was the man commanding the USS Cole on that fateful day in October 2000 when 17 American soldiers were killed in a suicide attack as the USS Cole sat in the Yemeni port of Aden. Good to see you, Commander. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jonathan. Wonderful to be on the show.
Thank you. And we also have with us Dakota Wood, who is a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Dakota, thank you very much for being here too.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Commander, let me come to you first. We're getting towards 15 years since the attack on the USS Cole. Are you surprised that at this point we are still talking about Yemen being a country that is in chaos, a country that is the home to some of the most dangerous terrorist groups in the world?
I don't think it is surprising. When you really look at Yemen, it is a very tribal country by nature, and what you're seeing is the uprising of one particular tribal group, the Houthis, who have felt underrepresented for literally decades, that have finally decided to exercise power, backed to a certain degree by Iran, that has flushed out the government and has clearly put us in a very awkward situation with respect to our ability to respond to the threat from Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is based in Yemen.
Dakota, what do we fear the most here? Do we fear this rebel group, the Houthis, or do we fear Al-Qaeda more? And what is the relationship between those two? Are they going to work together?
Yeah, I don't think you'll see. It might be a marriage of convenience on certain kinds of things, but it's not fear of the Houthis themselves. It's fear of the loss of access, where the previous government was cooperating with the U.S. and intelligence and special operations to try to flush out Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations. It gave us a perch to conduct those kinds of ops. So when you don't have a friendly cooperative government enabling that, it just makes the broader effort on the Arabian Peninsula that much more complicated. So it's really loss of access, intelligence, on-the-ground cooperation, and the ability to do things from there that we possibly won't be able to do as we go forward.
Interesting point. Commander, let me expand on that with you. We close our embassy there. We therefore have to scale back at the very least some of the operations being run through that embassy, some of the CIA ops, etc., the intelligence gathering ops. How damaging is that to our intelligence gathering capability, and are we right to have closed the embassy?
I think we were right to close it, but it is very damaging. The fact that the CIA station chief, it is his or her job to maintain and build a human intelligence apparatus throughout the country so that we can tell who is doing what, not only with the Yemenis government, but what government and other sources are doing to aid and abet Al-Qaeda on the Arabian Peninsula. Not having those resources or assets on the ground providing us real-time intelligence really in some ways puts us in a blind position where we don't know what's going on like we used to, and really endangers us. I think, as Dakota mentioned, while the Houthis in and of themselves don't represent a threat to us, Al-Qaeda on the Arabian Peninsula is, despite what the administration may say, an existential threat. They are still planning on a strategic way an attack against the United States. They have engaged in a number of bomb-making attempts against us that have not been successful, fortunately, but they are the true threat. And if we are blind, just like when USS Cole was attacked and there were no CIA assets down in Aden, if we don't have the assets out in country to find out what AQAP is doing, we endanger the nation.
Yeah, Dakota, it would be a fair point, wouldn't it? I know you say there may be little more than a marriage of convenience, but it is terribly convenient for Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to have got rid, or for this, for the US-backed government there to have been gotten rid of by the Houthi rebels.
Yeah, it releases some pressure on them. It's interesting the dynamics in that region where the Houthi or Shia strain, Al-Qaeda is Sunni, so some people think that they do not cooperate. But again, the enemy of my enemy, is my friend in some circumstances. So you do have these marriages of convenience. The relief of a cooperative government in Yemen enabling U.S. operations certainly relieves the pressure and provides greater opportunity where you have less governance, more freedom of action. It can become a sanctuary for planning and training and the prosecution of the types of attacks that the commander just mentioned.
Commander, let me wrap up with you here. What is your prognosis for Yemen and the short-term view, at least, for what this all means for U.S. national security?
I think you're going to see Yemen go through a period of turmoil. I think AQAP is going to try to take advantage of it where they can conduct an attack against the United States using this window, whereas Dakota mentioned the pressure may be off a little bit. But I think in the long term, the Houthis are going to realize they really do not have the capability to establish and run a government, that it is going to take a cooperative effort between everybody there to come together to make a nation that is going to still work. We are going to be able to reinstitute our assets in there, but it's going to be during this window of vulnerability while the embassy is shut down, while operations may be scaled back or curtailed because of knowledge, that we need to be very careful and keep an eye on things, because the last thing we want to do is to be able to lose all those assets completely.
All right. And Dakota, just to wrap up with you, U.S. interests in the region are at greater risk at the end of this week than they were at the beginning, given events in Yemen, would you say?
Yeah, it's a worse case than it was just a couple of days ago, certainly. So it would be greater reliance on other Gulf state cooperative partners like the Omanis and others. So we have to leverage those more. So the networks haven't disappeared. It just makes it more difficult to utilize them, to leverage them, and to know in real time what's going on in the region so we can defend against threats that come out of that region.
All right, Dakota Wood of the Heritage Foundation and Commander Kirk Lippold, former commander of the USS Cole. Wonderful to talk to you both and get your expertise on this in these dangerous times. Thank you both very much, gentlemen.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
All right, this has been On the Hunt at foxnews.com.